we can bring in France 24 senior reporter Catherine Norris. Trent, good afternoon, Catherine. Al-Zawahiri was living in downtown Kabul in what seems to be an upscale district. What does this tell us about relations between the Taliban and Al-Qaeda?
Well, it's very revealing indeed, because it seems clear that al-Zawahiri could not have been living in downtown central Kabul without the Taliban knowing. That seems inconceivable, because this is a very upscale area close to lots of diplomatic buildings where several Taliban figures have homes. There's lots of high security police patrols, checks, and for the last few months people have reported Taliban searching different houses, so really finding out who is living in each building. So such a high profile figure as al-Zawahiri living there without the Taliban knowing is inconceivable, and so that poses a lot of questions about the relationships. Now, Al-Qaeda leaders had pledged allegiance to the Taliban. Some Taliban figures, we've got to note the Taliban is divided, even in the leadership, had been trying to distance themselves from Al-Qaeda. They've been trying to keep this on a low scale, trying to play down their allegiances. But residents in that area have reported several non-Afghan, non-Western, Arab-speaking people coming and going in that area. It seems somewhat of an open secret. Lots of people were very surprised that he had been living in broad daylight in central Kabul. There was lots of reports that he could have been in Afghanistan, but perhaps more on those border areas, the tribal zones between Afghanistan and Pakistan. But here, right near the city centre, puts the Taliban in a very difficult position.
And what's interesting is how the Taliban have chosen to react.
They have condemned this drone strike, saying that it's an American drone strike, and saying that it is in clear violation of the Doha agreements. Now, you remember those talks in Doha in Qatar between the US administration, the Trump administration as it was, and the Taliban leadership, which brought about this peace deal and eventually led to the US pulling out and the Taliban, of course, taking power 1 year ago. And they're accusing the Americans with this drone strike of violating their sovereignty and firing on soil. But the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has on his half accused the Taliban of violating the Doha agreements by harbouring the Al-Qaeda leader in their soil. It's very interesting. It's going to get down to the details of what exactly is in the Doha agreement, because the Taliban, they say, pledged not to allow foreign fighting groups such as Al-Qaeda to mount attacks from their soil. They're saying that they were welcoming them as guests, perhaps. It's not the same thing as allowing groups to plot attacks. But that is a very fine line. And for the US, they're saying that this shows clearly that the Taliban cannot be trusted and that they have been harbouring Al-Qaeda leaders less than a year since they took over control of Kabul in the centre of the capital city.
And this is not some low-rung officer of the Taliban. This was somebody who had a $25 million bounty on his head. Let's not forget.
Absolutely. A huge symbolical figure, if not operationally as active as he had been in previous years.
Catherine, thank you very much for that. Catherine Norris there.